All right. Good evening, everyone. It being 6 o'clock on Monday, May 13th, 2024, we'll begin our third FY25 budget hearings. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence for all those who serve in our military at home and abroad and for their families. Thank you. Clerk Semino, could we have a roll call vote, please, to begin the meeting? A roll call, not a vote.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Baraka.
Here.
Councillor Moran.
Here.
Councillor Flaherty.
Here.
Councillor Maglio is currently not here. Councillor Reynolds is currently not here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome again, everyone. This is our third evening of budget hearings for the Committee of Ways and Means. For residents who may be watching from home, if you have questions or comments, please submit them to towncouncil@braintreema.gov. There will be a public hearing on Wednesday, May 29th. Beginning at 7 o'clock for residents who wish to speak in public on the budget. But between now and then, please do send in any comments or questions you have. All right, so we have no approval of minutes this evening, and we have no old business this evening. So with that, we will turn to our new business. And we have 24020 Mayor, the FY 2025 operating budget, or take up any action relative thereto. Do we have a motion to take this off the table?
Madam Chair, I move to take off the table order number 24020.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. This evening, we will be hearing from our Public Works departments. That includes our overarching Department of Public Works, the Sewer Enterprise Fund, the Water Enterprise Fund, and the Stormwater Enterprise Fund. All right, so with that, I want to welcome and thank Director Jim Arsenault for being here. We're also joined this evening with our Finance Director, Mike Esmond, and our Town Auditor from CLA, Catherine Pomeroy. Thank you all for being here this evening, and we'll recognize the other department heads as we call them up. But again, thank you everyone for joining us. So Director Arsenault or our Director Esmond, did one of you want to begin with a statement?
Sure. Yeah, so I just wanted to give a little bit of an overview. So the Public Works Department, when I first came here about 7 years ago, we made some changes to the department. So we started off with, we had some changes to, we decided to implement, after I soon got here, about a year later, we decided to implement a stormwater fund. So we had a fund that we created which would be implemented over time to kind of help out with the concerns and issues we had regarding water quality. And so I believe it's done a great job at bringing water quality into loop and providing more focus on catch basin cleanings and cleaning the streets and sweeping the streets. So that's helped significantly, and that's, as you mentioned, an enterprise fund on its own. We also provided some staffing changes and made sure that there was more progressive movement up towards the ranks, and so there was a reorganization at that time. And then also the facilities division was non-existent almost. There was about 2 staff and some other people that were doing their own thing. We kind of brought those together. So now we implemented eventually the school maintenance program where I actually maintain the schools as well. And then, just so you're aware, like the DPW has a lot of divisions within it. It's not, some places are like, they have one duty or there are several duties, but DPW has numerous different duties or divisions within it. So the administrative division, which is 85 Quincy Ave, is kind of the financial analyst, myself, and a person who does helps with the processing of payments and things, office manager. Then we also have the facilities and equipment division I mentioned. That started off kind of just being a few people, but it grew, and then we helped manage and process, get things done for a facilities division. And so with the facilities division currently, they manage all of the town buildings, all the school buildings, all of the facilities basically within the community that's owned by the town. Then the new division was also created for school custodial services, and that was a significant change where it wasn't just custodials in the town, but also in the school system. And we've done a lot of efficiencies originally with the facilities division, and this created some more efficiencies that, to help us kind of make things function a little bit better within the community. Then there's actually a separate school maintenance division that we have that kind of helps to manage with specifically, can manage the town, but also manages the schools, but it's a separate entity. Then there's we have a traffic, not a division, but kind of a part of engineering that helps out with traffic issues and concerns. The engineering division manages all of engineering-related work activities, which would be mapping, design plans, drainage design, things like that. And then the highway division is basically does all kinds of different things. Whatever is needed, they come out there and they try to tackle it. They have dump trucks, backhoes, loaders. They basically oversee the general maintenance of all the right-of-way and all the roads, but they do a lot more than that. They even help with putting out voting booths, and you name it, they do it. So then the solid waste division, they're located at 245 Union Street. And then the solid waste division at 74 Pond Street, they deal with all of the trash that gets taken out and disposed of. They also do they have a center at by the transfer station as well, and a recycling center, and they do a lot of, they help all of the process a lot of the waste throughout the community. And then there's a recreation division that's also at 74 Pond. They have all of the recreation activities through the community. They help all the grounds through not only the town grounds, but also the school grounds. And so they have art, actually oversee an art facility as well. And then, so that's kind of that one. And then the grounds division I mentioned is also part of that division. There's also a cemetery division where we oversee multiple cemeteries, some larger than others, but we manage to maintain all of them. There's a golf division, which you'll see tomorrow, and I'll be there for that. Then there's the water. Then it goes into, as you mentioned, the golf one is a utility as well, but it will be seen tomorrow. Then there's a water and sewer division, and then there's a stormwater division. The water and sewer division is all of the waste that goes into the sewers and also all the water supply for the community. And then the stormwater division, as I mentioned, helps out maintaining the waters throughout the community. So just want to give you a brief overview of the different functions that we have, and it's very diverse, and that's about. And then the overall budget, I think you all have it, and then we'll go through that. So.
Thank you very much, Director Arsenault, and certainly I know how busy you are because it's one of the most frequently asked questions I get from constituents is about concerns and help needed from our DPW. So thank you to you and all your staff for the tireless efforts of day in, day out, 24/7. The DPW is an essential service, and it is a 24/7 job. So thank you. So with that, I would like to open it up to my colleagues on the council for questions, comments. I will only preface this by saying if we have questions about the capital budget, that's not on tonight's agenda, so please hold those, but certainly anything that's in the budget we can pursue. So anybody have questions they want to begin with? Councilor Flaherty.
Thank you. So I have a smattering of questions, and they're just not all united by one theme. So forgive me if it seems like we're bouncing all over the place. I think, the main concern that I'm hearing from residents is the extent to which we are facing cuts in various areas. And one of the areas that gets brought up to a great extent is to do with recreation. And it is, I think I'm pretty clear on certain areas of cuts in that department, specifically with regard to the school, the playground, summer playground programming, and then also the closure of the splash pad. What I'd like some clarification on is that it seems like programs that are fee-based are staying in place because they're fee-based and that's how those will be covered. But I'm wondering about certain things that are not fee-based, like the Sunset Lake Concert Series or Bingo Night or things of that nature. How are we prepared to continue with those, or are we?
If you don't mind, if
Of course.
Chris Griffin can
Bring up
assist.
the expert.
Thank you for joining us, Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Counselor. To your point, Counselor, you're just using some of the examples you gave. The Sunset Lake Summer Concert Series is generously, as it is every year, provided by Braintree Electric Light. So that is, they've fully paid for it. All of the contracts have been signed with all the band. So that the concerts are pretty much, with the exception of, keeping a lifeguard on for a couple hours that night on 7 Tuesday nights, they're pretty much cost neutral to the general fund budget. So the concerts will stay in place. As for bingo nights, there's a very that's something we like to run about once a month. There's a very minimal cost to it. I would say maybe $150 in total to run that event. On a monthly basis, so that's a pretty low cost compared to some of the other costs you mentioned, like the splash pad and the neighborhood playground programs.
Okay. When we're talking about the splash pad in particular, are there insurance concerns associated with that, operating that, or is it really just the cost of the staff that you have to have in the water that we supply?
It's pretty much completely staffing related. To staff the splash pad for the summer, the past few summers, it's run about $22,000 to staff it completely for the summer. And with the cut we received in our summer line item, that's a big chunk of it. So yeah, the decision under this existing budget to keep the splash pad closed was completely the cost of staffing it.
Okay. And about field maintenance, I think in my mind, field maintenance means mowing the field and then perhaps also a certain amount of litter removal. Is there more to it than that, or is that pretty much a good description of what it is?
I mean, well, there's a lot of maintenance that goes into the facilities we oversee. Not just the mowing of it, which not only does that cost come out of supplies to keep the lawns as they are, it also comes out of overtime money, because in order certain seasons during the year, in order to keep up with with growing, we have to bring staff in on overtime to keep it and that's to keep it at a low level. It also includes, particularly this time of year, the preparing of baseball and softball fields. Just the nature of those games in particular mean that those fields need a lot more preparation for each contest, more than say a soccer field. You can put the box and the lines in for a soccer field and it's good for a week, whereas a baseball or softball diamond, for the most part, particularly on the high school level, has to be prepared for each game. The field has to be raked, the foul lines have to be put down, the batter's boxes in. And, depending on weather, that can be an increased cost there. We do have some, the maintenance would also include maintenance to the turf at the high school, which is very expensive, maintenance to the courts, which are very expensive. We did undertake about $70,000 worth of new bleachers last year for areas throughout town. which we were glad to do, which was long needed. But that sometimes, you have to make a decision on, what the money's going to be spent on. And last year, there were some safety concerns expressed. They had been being expressed, so we decided the best use of our resources was to do a significant bleacher replacement throughout town. The main beneficiaries of that were those who use Watson Park, East Braintree Little League, and those who use the field behind Flaherty, South Braintree Girls Softball.
Okay, so we were funding bleacher replacement through the general fund rather than the capital budget?
Bleacher replacement was paid, I believe, through the money we had brought in over several years through different fees and that sort of thing. But it's also, we receive a certain amount for maintenance every year. Unfortunately, that goes a lot to day-to-day maintenance, things that pop up. For instance, there's some damage that we have to repair at the dugout fences of the Braintree High baseball fields, varsity and JV. That's an expense that, for safety reasons, needs to be taken care of. And as we receive, I think, last year it was, excuse me for 1 second, sorry. Where are we? Sorry, just let me look it up real quick.
It's fine. Take your time, Mr. Griffin.
So last year, our budget for repairs and maintenance was $75,000. And in a perfect world, we'd like to be spending that on some, serious work on, courts and playgrounds. But in reality, the vast majority of it goes to things that we can't foresee, whether it's, weather that takes something or damages something. It's the day-to-day maintenance that line item ends up going towards, and that, so yeah, that's where that line item will go.
Okay, so help me understand, we'll use Watson Park as an example, because I know that there's many of them, and they're maybe not all the same, but we'll use that one. Watson Park has to be mowed. How often does Watson Park have to be mowed?
Ideally, probably, it will all depend on the time of year, but this time of year, ideally, you'd want to hit it probably once a week. We
Okay.
can probably get away with it being mowed every 2 weeks, but particularly during the baseball season, you start hearing from leagues, and I totally understand this, that, because, I was a baseball coach for 12 years down there, and when the grass got long, we would tell the infielders to charge the ball. But ideally, once a week,
Okay, so in this current budget, where we have, reduced resources, how often would you be able to mow it?
I'd say probably, once every 2 weeks, but, we could probably, it wouldn't become a huge issue until next spring, because this current fiscal budget runs us through June 30th, and we could probably, activities going on down there through late July, and then we hope to start the Delory Field renovation after July. So the level of activity at Watson that requires, regular mowing really goes down around August 1st. So we can redeploy at that point. So I would think it would become more of an issue if we were on a lower maintenance schedule come next spring.
Okay, so next spring,
Next spring, it probably would become a bigger issue a noticeable issue than it will be, say, later this summer into the fall.
can you describe what it would look like next spring?
It would, the lawns would get somewhat long. We wouldn't, it just, the mowing schedule would be a bit slower. It would get high. We would hit it on a regular basis.
I know, but
Yeah.
and I'm trying, maybe you're not able to provide me with the level of specificity that
Yeah.
I'm looking for. You're saying that now you would do it about one time a week ideally, and you
Yeah.
might sometimes, as the grass grows more slowly
Yes.
later in the season,
Yeah.
hit it once every
And
2 weeks.
we might hit it more regularly if there's going to be a,
But if if we were confronted with less funding because the override does not pass, how often do you think you'd be able to get to those lawns, fields?
Because there might be a significant cut in overtime, it might, I'd say, 10 days to 2 weeks. Because as I said earlier, a lot of the work is done in order to keep up with it during certain seasons. You do need a significant amount of overtime.
I'll say also, like, if you had some issues, like there's a hole in the, in the fields, or there's issues are beyond our control, like you said, if this fencing gets damaged, things like that, it's going to be awfully hard to get new things to make it safe. I mean, we'll probably have to somehow, but we won't have the resources to really take care of a lot of things other than just emergencies, So.
Okay, and then, thank you so much for providing that kind of color. That's the level of color that I think helps people understand where their tax dollars go and what's on the line in the coming weeks. So in a similar vein, Director Arsenault, I'm interested in, can you describe the rate at which the C-click fix responses would change?
Counselor, do you mind if we just hold that for 1 second? We can do any other recreation questions while we have
Absolutely,
Mr. Griffin,
I'm
and
totally
then,
flexible.
thank you, and then we'll maybe, since you're up here, does anyone have any other recreation questions? Counselor Maglio? Thank you.
I have a general one first. So, and then I have questions for Mr. Griffin. Thank you very much. So what we're looking at right now in terms of these numbers, when we're looking at, let's say, summer programs are $200,000 this year in FY24, and next year that's $140,000, less $60,000. That is without the override, correct? Okay. So without the override, we're looking at $60,000 less in summer programming, which I can't believe that our summer programming is only $200,000. I mean, it seems like almost impossible to squeeze that out, but yet we have to, so you did. So what exactly, what stayed in this $140,000?
Certainly. Our camp programs, our sports camp, our kiddos camp, we did in our special needs program, which we spoke about last week, we anticipate being able to staff, the last couple of summers we've staffed 4 neighborhood playgrounds. We anticipate on this budget to staff 2. I don't have the locations yet. We'll announce those shortly, as well as we determined that it was still necessary to have our normal lifeguard contingent at Sunset Lake. It is just too much. It was a safety issue. There's just too much, that can happen if you don't have the appropriate lifeguards there. And obviously, we saw yesterday, sadly, a gentleman died drowned not too far from here in Halifax on a town lake. So we can see how very easy that can happen, and how easily preventable it is if we have a good trained lifeguard staff on duty. We are cutting down in leadership positions. We're bringing a lot of staff schedule, not bringing back some of our longtime summer employees who, and we're bringing a lot of the work internal as far as scheduling of things and everything. So we're not going to have, unfortunately, this year we're not going to have as many directors and supervisors as we've had in summers past. We did, a few people mentioned it to me, so I'll say that it was noticeable, but not too noticeable. A slight increase in the camp fees. We've always been proud of providing our residents a very affordable summer program, and to be honest with you, in the past, the fees have pretty much gone to the cost of running, the non-staffing costs of running the program themselves, the T-shirts, the equipment, the food, for that sort of thing. But we did have to, I'd say about a, 10, 15% increase. We're still the best deal around. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise, but, and we're very proud of that. So just to finish that, the fees, some of the fees we charge, which is the first time in decades, are going to have to offset some of the staffing costs, which is not something we have, certainly not in my time, and I don't think in the time of any of my predecessors.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
So I have just a couple of questions
Sure.
about all of that. So now last year we had something called Parties in the Park.
Yeah.
Where was that in the budget?
That would be taken out of the community events portion that we receive about $10,000 for.
What page is that?
I'm on page 33.
33.
415 DPW Rec and Community Events.
Oh, right there, yes. Okay, so I'm sorry, so 24 was 10, so 25, so we still will have Parties in the Park.
Yes, we still will. We are, we've, I want to, thank my colleagues that we have in the office, Emma and Michaela, as well as, Jim and Ben and Darren Brown up the golf course. We've had a lot of discussions over the past year about, how to move forward, how to, just because we did something one year doesn't mean we have that, sometimes things become almost traditional. So we are looking for, how to repurpose some of that money as well. For example, when we have our movie nights this summer, for a good long while now, we haven't had great attendance at the games and such before the movies. And that's a significant cost. It's about $1,500 to bring that in. So we determined that, that $1,500 would be spent better elsewhere. We'd still have the movie nights, it's just we probably wouldn't do the pre-movie games because you just don't get the people there for that.
Makes sense. So with the other kinds of events that you have planned for the, because what I'm thinking about is you mentioned about the lifeguards, and there'd be a lifeguard at Sunset Lake. I don't believe there's a lifeguard at Smith Beach.
There hasn't been one since before COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we have then is we have Smith Beach with no lifeguard, which in the scheme of things, I don't think people should be swimming at Smith Beach anyway, because I think they are taking risks to be in that water. But people wade, we all do it when we're down there. So there's no lifeguard at Smith Beach. And then there would be no splash pad at Watson Park. There would be baseball happening. And then there'd be a pretty significant project that's starting soon.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, in terms of the events that stayed versus the events that left, is there some sort of aggregate number that you also looked at to decide how many people actually benefit from it? Because, of course, what I'm going to push for, or at least put out there, and I'm sure you've thought about this, but I would just like to remind you that people come from lots of places for the splash pad, although there was a decision made to only let people from Braintree. So that's where we are now, is that only Braintree residents can use it, and now not even Braintree residents can use it. And I'm wondering, in the scheme of things, what happens to that facility, and any facility, really, that goes unused for a year? Does that present other complications that are costly a year from now if we decide to turn it back on?
No, we'd still put it through its regular maintenance steps. Lou Dutton from Water and Sewer and I have been speaking. Obviously, there's the annual. We're very grateful to Water and Sewer, who put it through its paces at the beginning of every year. We would certainly do that. Unfortunately, keeping the splash pad closed for a summer is something we had to do not too many summers ago during COVID in 2020. And we still have ground staff who will go down there and maintain the area around it. And Water and Sewer will still do its regular maintenance checks.
Is there a way to, or did you think through the potential to open it for half a day? rather than full days?
Yeah, we did look at some different options, but it was just, based on, obviously, as you said earlier, the 140,000 is a lot less than 200,000. And if I'm being honest, if you go back about 10 years or so and you look how that summer line item has grown, had it not been for the non-existent summer of 2020, just based on how it was growing over the years, I'd say we'd probably now be at about, say, 250 in that line, but COVID kind of reset us. And now with, these potential cuts, we're even further down. So as I said, we know we do need the funding to run the programs, just because we have several hundred kids per week in those programs. And obviously, there's no, the safety at Sunset Lake, just, I know that there was obviously, that had to be the priority.
So is there and I definitely understand that, there are many splash pads that operate without staff in different towns.
Yep.
Where did the requirement for us to have, for Braintree to have a staffer?
I believe it comes, this is a little bit before my time, when Nelson Chin was in charge, but I believe there are several reasons. Safety, to provide first aid if anything happens. There is no standing water there, so there's no danger of anybody drowning or anything. The water, as soon as it comes up, it goes right down the drain. And also to, monitor Gordon Road for any issues as well, due to the fact that it is located in a neighborhood, and the neighborhood did and has continued to express concerns related to parking and that sort of thing.
For sure.
Yeah.
So that's something that signage would really help address.
I
can say and I can definitely say as someone who's in that area walking all the time, the staff are wonderful at the splash pad, but they are not managing Gordon Road. I mean, let's be honest. Nobody's looking at Gordon Road when they're at the splash pad. They're mostly on their phones, and that's fine. And they're checking IDs. And that seems to be the role. So it's unfortunate that role now means that a whole lot of people won't be able to enjoy that one form. And I know that's not your fault. I'm just
I understand.
Elevating that because it seems like it's an easy way to provide some outdoor summer fun. It's pretty low cost. So I'm disappointed to see that. Moving on, I have another question about the 4th of July, the Braintree Day.
Yeah.
So this year, the town has contributed $40,000, and then there's an additional amount that the town puts in, which comes through the cost of the staffing. The grounds people, the firefighters, the police officers, DPW, and I've been told that estimate is about $60,000. So it's about $100,000 that the town of Braintree has put into the Braintree Day, 4th of July celebration.
Correct, yeah.
That's correct?
Yes.
So it's $100,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, obviously, some of it is absorbed by, what's listed here, others, and
I'm not hearing you.
Oh, I'm sorry, some of it's absorbed by the money that are in the budget, and some of it's also absorbed by the departments themselves, so.
So there isn't a line item in other departments?
No, so what,
Oh, sorry.
do you mind if I?
Please,
Okay.
please.
So there's money that's dedicated for the fireworks, but there's also,
There's
There's money that's dedicated for the fireworks, but there's also money that's dedicated, that's part of the regular overtime that you don't see. Just like with police, you don't see that because it's just an overtime line item. And so that's just eaten out of that line item. But it's still, around, like you said, around 60,000, so.
Okay, so 60,000 that is not identified in the budget, that is just from different departments
Yeah.
clocking in and out.
Yeah, we're aware of it, and we make sure there's available funding for it when we're able to do it. But this year, obviously, is a little different. So,
And then that direct payment of bills for the 40,000. So I think that moving forward, Director Esmond, I would say that looking at the opportunities that really build goodwill, that build morale, that build community, are certainly splashy events like Braintree Day Parade. However, the splash pad is, something that's from June to September that all the children of Braintree can enjoy any day of the week versus one day for a lot less money. A lot less money. So that's a really unfortunate trade-off, but I understand the necessity, and I also see that next year that is not in there. Those line items are not in there.
just so you're aware, like almost everything in the budget was somehow cut. So there isn't it's all over the place because it's
I'm aware.
It was substantial, and
Yeah.
the only way to do that was to make hard choices.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I get it. So my last piece is if what ends up happening is that we don't necessarily see where there are little pockets to, like you mentioned, you make sure that those resources are there so that the staff can be there to clean up and set up and prepare and crowd control and do all those things for Braintree Day. How do you do that? And is there a way to do that? Like, what else is in there for those special events that we may not see because they're not listed or labeled that way?
Yeah. So if you mind, I can bring up Ben Hall. So he knows a lot more about the spending on the highway side, because the highway does a lot of different things, and so Ben can explain to you some of the functions
Hi.
beyond what you see.
Yeah, so, I mean, all the individual departments have overtime lines for start of the year to the end of the year, and it's just historically, the overtime is it's paid out of our natural overtime line. So it's not directly attributed to the 4th of July celebration. We only have the 2 line items in recreation that are specifically set for those fees, but the prep work for the couple of weeks leading up to it, the breakdown work, all that other stuff, I mean, it's not hidden. It's in our regular highway staff get paid out of the highway overtime line, like it was any other Saturday or Sunday work.
So I want to be really clear. I don't think that it was hidden in terms of that there was something nefarious going on within any department. However, I do believe that it very specifically was not called to our attention last year during the budgeting process because very specific questions were asked about Braintree Day, about the spending, and I realize that that's last year and we're in this year now. And just the lack of clarity around where these how events manage to happen and fit within the budget, and the lack of awareness of that trail of funding, because it's something that I wasn't aware of when we were discussing this last year. It wasn't specifically part of the answer that was given to us, and it was, I think it's a surprise when people find out. I think that people don't really think about all the work that goes into so much of what happens in this town. The highway, the recreation, setting up for camp, doing special days, special events, parties, Sunset Lake. All of these events require all of these workers to prepare the area, to figure out the backup plan, the rain or shine. And so I think that that's a big part of the work that people don't necessarily see, don't necessarily connect to these amounts in the budget, and then when we start talking about certain ones, it seems like there was just a bit of an extra effort to find out how all those costs were being paid. So it's helpful to know this, it's helpful to hear this, and I think that everybody who's working, especially if they're doing overtime, absolutely need the overtime and have earned it. But it's also, where do we want to use that overtime? Do we want to use it when there's been an emergency in town, when there's a bad storm, when there's, entire parks that aren't going to be able to be opened, that there's beaches that we can't staff? So I think that is part of what I would hope that the mayor's office would work with departments about, making sure that the metrics that we're using are that the most people get the enjoyment from what we have left. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Leo. Sticking on recreation, Councilor Reynolds.
Okay, I think Mr. Griffin might have to come back for this one.
Okay, sure.
Good evening, Mr. Griffin.
Good evening, Councilor.
Mr. Arsenault.
Sure.
Okay, really, a few questions, and I'll try to make this brief. And your response to the point, we can get through this pretty quickly. How many fields in total? How many fields in total is your department responsible for its maintenance or operations?
We are responsible for all the grounds around, to start with, all the grounds around our schools, so as well as schools that don't technically aren't schools anymore, the Penniman Park, the Foster School, obviously the entire grounds of the high school up from a certain distance.
So
out,
all
about
active
50 feet.
schools, you're responsible for
All
the athletic fields there? And
Correct,
any other
yep.
fields such as Hollis?
Yep, Hollis, French's Common, Watson Park, Penniman Park, every park in town, Lincoln Park, Faxon Park, Berwick Park,
Daly Field?
Daly Field, yes. That is,
Okay.
We actually
So-
don't own the parking lot there, though.
Okay, so of all these fields that are used athletically,
About 100 acres.
thank you, and so you're responsible for the maintenance of that as well in your budget, or is that shared with the DPW groundskeeping?
It's shared between DPW Rec and then the DPW grounds.
Okay, all right. And are there rentals?
There are rentals, yes.
So what is rented and versus what is offered to the community for use, such as Little League
Yeah.
and soccer leagues, et
So
cetera?
youth sports leagues do not pay a rental fee. That includes all the little leagues, Braintree Youth Soccer, Braintree Flag Football.
So maybe it'd be easier for me to ask, what revenues are generated available to the town from the use of any of our athletic fields?
Yes, revenue generated would be from AAU groups who utilize the fields, high schools such as Archbishop Williams,
Archbishop Williams pays a fee?
they do pay a fee.
Okay.
Pretty much any non-Braintree Youth Sports League, with the
There's a
exception of
semi-pro football team.
semi-pro football team, yep.
Pays a fee?
They pay a fee, yep, correct, yep.
Okay, and where does this money that gets collected for the use of these fields go?
It goes into our revenue account, which, as I mentioned.
DPW revenue or town revenue?
Recreation revenue account.
Recreation
Yeah,
revenue.
which, as I mentioned earlier, that's where we were able to make a significant investment last year in new bleachers.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Sunset Lake, who pays for the maintenance of the lake, the grounds there at the lake, and any water treatments?
Grounds are paid for by us. Conservation pays for the water.
Okay, thank you. And any fees generated from the Sunset Lake use?
There are some fees. If somebody wants to have a wedding there, the fee currently is $50.
And cleanup of those particular events? Who takes care of that?
usually the events that are held at the lake aren't big enough to create any sort of significant.
So you're not expending any of your budget on cleanup of those events?
No, not for the
Okay.
events themselves. Just regular cleanup.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, terrific. I don't mean to be short with you.
No,
I
no,
just-
it's all right.
There's a lot of questions here.
Yeah.
I know that some of the other councils want to get to as well. Doherty Gym rentals.
Mm-hmm.
Does the revenue collected from the rentals of that gym go to the same recreation?
Yes, and
Revenue account.
most of it pays for the custodians who actually staff the gym.
Okay. And is our youth basketball leagues, are they also free of charge of the use of those gyms?
I have to, the school gyms, I'd have to yield to Rob DeVito, but as far as Doherty goes, it's similar to the fields, Braintree Youth Basketball.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I'm going to ask a question or a request, if I may, Madam Chair, through you, that could we get a full listing of all your, before the end of this budget review season, if we could get a full listing, or point me to a full listing of all of the various fields, gymnasiums, athletic complex that generate fees, and what have been those fees over the last 2 to 3 years. 3 years, we'll call it.
Yes, sir.
Okay? That'd be terrific. I'm trying to get a sense of these opportunities that we have, and also, I know it's great if the community is able to provide free of service a lot of these facilities for our youth. I agree with that, and I encourage that. However, I think it's prudent upon all of us just to have an assessment of just how much cost that we do pick up.
Yeah.
It's just, again, part of the due diligence exercise. Of course. And then, let's just see, and baseball. You're going to give me a list also of the soccer fields, baseball, softball, lacrosse, and any of these fields that are used for various different types of sports, but on the same field.
Correct.
And maybe even the seasons itself would be helpful for us. And again, the Doherty Gym, if you could give me a breakdown of that. And then just the last one would be the school gyms themselves that are active.
Those would fall under Rob DeVito over at facilities.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that would fall under facilities.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you. I appreciate your time on that and your
Thank you.
quick answers.
Thank you,
Madam
Counselor.
Chair.
Counselor Reynolds, just a real quick follow-up on Counselor Reynolds' line of question for you, Director Esmond. Are those fees part of the reevaluation of fees that's taking place?
Yes, so the rental of land in, specifically the rental of land in buildings is one that we're looking for as part of the fee categories that are on the table for what we're looking at.
Okay.
Not just for this fiscal year, but to put them as subject to that sort of regular process of evaluating, modest increases regularly so that we stay on track with the schedule.
Great, thank you. Follow up on that?
Thank you. Could I ask, Director Esmond, could I ask that Watson Park be on the list, the splash pad be on the list to think about in terms of if there were to be some sort of a permit? I know that there was a sticker for, 1 day a week, maybe camps or small groupings could, if it was coordinated and facilitated and it wasn't 50 buses coming in, but that would be a great outing for an hour or two, and perhaps we could sell permits and raise enough to pay for the staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Maglio. Counselor Moran, Recreation?
You know what, I don't have anything on recreation, Madam Chair. I do have a question just for administration. We've been focusing primarily on what is being cut, but there is an increase in your administration budget this year. Could you describe, and it has been a pretty consistent growth item over the last 3 years, your administrative budget. I just want to, I assume you're taking on additional personnel that weren't there before, but you're requesting 719 and you were at 671 last year. It's one of the few that is going up, so I just wanted to ask about that.
So what happened was we reorganized where the department heads were, because it used to be the town engineer or the assistant director used to be in engineering. And then Ben Hulk, or the assistant, the superintendent of the highway, who used to be, now it's assistant director. Those two assistant director positions went into the admin. And I'm not particularly sure why it shows a revenue difference.
Well, you're showing a precipitous, that probably adds to the precipitous drop in your highway number too. All right.
Yeah, they did have
Okay.
increases and things
I
like
appreciate that clarification. I'll be back with more overview, but I don't have any for recreation. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Moran. I have a few for recreation. I also want to follow up on the splash pad, and I won't belabor the point, but I do think, thank you, Counselor Maglio, I think given where we're at, you know, I hope that we have looked at every single option, and if not ideal, if offering the use of the splash pad for a nominal fee for residents and maybe an increased fee for out-of-town users would allow that to stay open, I hope we've explored that option. And again, given residents the option to basically pay for the splash pad, and I would like a better explanation as to why we have to have that staffed. Like, is there a legal reason? Is there insurance reasons?
It needs to be staffed because as soon as we opened it, we almost got sued.
Okay.
Two kids bumped into each other, and a woman was ready to sue us until we showed her the tape of her kid causing the problem. So you
So
have.
there's a legal reason for
Yeah,
it.
it's a legal reason. It's an attractive nuisance, and to not staff it would create a liability.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you, Counselor Moran. And then the other thing, I just think it's important to get on the record as I'm looking at the MAPC's heat island map here. East Braintree is a designated heat island, and to have really no form of wet recreation for kids all summer long in that part of town, that's walkable for a lot of neighborhoods and and is also a designated environmental justice zone. I think when we're thinking about making these decisions, I am fully aware of the budgetary constraints we're facing, but I'd like to just put out there that thinking about equity and sustainability needs to also be considered. And I will leave it at that for the splash pad. Okay, we talked about this last year, and I would like another explanation as to how the Art Center is getting funded, because I don't see a line item in the budget, and maybe I missed it, and if I did, please let me know. How are we paying for the Art Center?
The Art Center is, as far as the programming goes, it's pretty self-sustaining with the the fees that are charged for each program, and then the staffing of the Art Center, the work that goes into any sort of clerical work to make these programs happen up the Art Center is all handled by Recreation Department staff. So there's no person hired to handle things at the Rec Center. It's all, at the Art Center. It's all handled internally.
So do we not have a revolving account for the Art Center?
So the Art Center in 2019 came under the jurisdiction of the Recreation Department. So anything to do with the Art Center is paid for by our department. Any fees we collect go towards the running of those programs.
And most of the people that are there are volunteers too as well, so that work there, so.
Well, regardless, we still need supplies, cleanup, all of that. If we can get an understanding of how those Art Center fees are collected, what they're going to, and is that also, I guess, Director Esmond, on your list for looking at? In my understanding, I want to make sure that the instructors who are getting paid adequately, either through fees or otherwise.
I know there's a lot of volunteers because my daughter's one, so.
I'm sorry, go ahead,
I
Director.
said, I know there's volunteers because my daughter
Oh,
comes and
I understand
volunteers
that,
on a
yeah,
regular basis, so.
I'm sorry, Director Esmond, did you want to
I
have?
was going to say, in the discussions on the reduction, we hadn't included that as a strategy, but we'll definitely run the analysis and come back.
Okay, great, thank you. And I think that was all I had on recreation. Counselor Flaherty, back to you.
You want me to pick the next designated?
I think we're good set with you, Mr. Griffin, but thank you for your time.
The discussion that we've just had related to the Braintree Day celebration has kind of piqued my interest. This committee has spent a great deal of time going over the overtime budgets for police and fire, but rarely do we touch on the overtime budgets for DPW. And it's located, overtime expenses are located in a number of different areas of the budget, but the largest buckets go with facilities, highway, snow, and grounds, although there's also some buckets for administration, construction administration, cemetery, and even elder affairs. So the question I have is mostly around where, if you were to do a pie chart of where these overtime expenses go, you know, can you kind of, well, first of all, I would like a pie chart showing actual numbers, but I don't expect you to have that, be able to produce that right at this moment. But if you were going to give me kind of a ballpark idea of where overtime funding goes by category, what would that look like? Like, for example, we've talked about financing Braintree Day and the overtime that DPW supplies for that event. But there's so many other events, like there's the Christmas tree lighting, and there's also Braintree Beautification Day, where you do a lot of roundup of debris that people pick up. And there's, I don't know, the Chinese New Year, for example, that's a new one that's mostly indoors. So there's costs to any kind of event that this community hosts, but of course there's also great benefit to those events. And I think there might be other areas where overtime is being slotted in. So can you just comment on those, on overtime usage in the DPW, broadly speaking?
Sure. I mean, basically wherever the employee works is what, so if a highway employee works overtime, then it goes to the highway overtime line. If a grounds guy works overtime, it goes to the grounds overtime line.
Sure.
Each event is different. Highway staff help out with cones for a number of different road races, not all of them, some of them. And again, when that comes about, it just kind of resides wherever the employee works.
Well, certainly I understand that only, you know, people working in the highway department would be collecting overtime for highway. I'm really thinking about like what demands cause a need, does the town, you know, what happens in Braintree that causes a need for overtime to begin with? Snow and ice is pretty straightforward. Like if we get a big snow event, people are going to put in overtime to collect, to make sure our roads are clear. But I'm not really clear on like what other kinds of events or conditions create the need for overtime in other categories.
Okay, I mean, some days it's you know, the crew is on the job site and they need 2 more hours in the day to finish the work, so not have to pack up, come back, go back a second day. You could spend overtime finishing the job for that day, maybe work 10 hours instead of 8, so they don't have to clean up and go to the job site twice. All the special events, delivering ballots on Election Day is overtime. Getting caught up, we have 4 or 5 days of rain and you need to get caught up on mowing can lead to overtime. All the special events the town has, be it you know, road races, events at Town Hall, events at the Common out here. On the ground side, prepping baseball fields for weekend games. Anything that's not a Monday through Friday, 7 to 3.
There's also the things that happen, like, you know, there might be a bunch of boxes that, in the past, there used to be a lot of boxes up and behind the screens there. And so we had to go and move all those boxes, and all the highway guys came down to help out. And sometimes it might be during alternate, after hours, if it's be told to
Items,
function for it.
emergency or otherwise, that, we can't get to in our regular day.
Yeah, unforeseen conditions come up and we have to have someone come out at night. That happens, so.
Okay, what would you say are the top 4 drivers, top 4 or 5 drivers?
I mean, obviously.
Regular maintenance tasks that are on a time constraint, putting speed humps out, things like that. Some work that doesn't necessarily jump into our daily.
Can I just ask a question? Okay, so just on this overtime stuff, years ago, in the 1991 recession, I'm dating myself, I'm sorry, but the way we were going to outsource line painting for highway, okay? And we're going to do it because we were paying overtime to do it at night. And the union came back and said, we'll change our shifts if we can keep the work. Have you thought of, do you change your shifts or have you adjusted shifts so that you could avoid overtime in certain situations? Perhaps you can mitigate that with a shift differential, and that way you're saving money and still getting the thing done, the task done, but with less overtime.
Correct. No, I mean, to an extent, we do. Our paint crew does shift. We do actually still sub out the long lines, but it's more to just.
Could that model be like applied to other things? Like now we're talking about reducing, we just heard about, we're going to mow once every 2 weeks instead of, once a week. Could we talk or work with the union to adjust the schedule so that you could do that without incurring overtime and save the work?
No, because there aren't enough hours in the day. There aren't enough man hours to get the current
Okay.
workload done.
All right, I appreciate it, thank you.
I mean, yeah.
Council Flaherty, I'll turn it back to you.
I guess what I'm trying to put into context is, and perhaps I've misunderstood, so you can correct me. You said it was $50,000 or $60,000 for Braintree Day, but the reason that struck me was, I mean, that's the whole highway budget right there. So, and I thought it was a lot less. Can you go over those costs again?
Yes, we figured between the police overtime, grounds overtime, highway overtime, facility staff, it is, you're correct, it did 60,000 plus or minus in overtime, but it's spread out into 4, 5, 6 different departments, so that's why that 60,000 number in highway isn't completely depleted on that day, because a portion of it is highway staff related.
Okay, so you're saying that it's about $60,000 total for the day, but that includes every department
Yes,
in the DPW and also the police
yes,
and fire,
yes.
because they have to be present for the fireworks.
Yes, they have yeah. Last
Okay.
time we discussed it, they had a little bit of overtime. They're not as heavy of a overtime draw for that day as the other departments.
Would you characterize Braintree Day as the largest driver of overtime for your department, or is it snow and
Sure.
ice?
Yeah, it's the largest event. Yep.
Okay. I'm going to turn my attention, unless other people have questions about overtime. No? Okay. I'm going to turn my attention to see-click-fix responses. Generally speaking, because of the anticipated loss of staffing in highway and on facilities, it has been, we've been told to expect that there would be a diminished capacity to respond to requests for all kinds of things in all areas. And I guess I'm trying to put in a time expectation. So like, if a request was something that now would be taking you like a week to respond to, in the conditions that we are expecting to see in the coming year with the new budget, how long would a resident reasonably expect to wait for a see-click fix of the same nature to be addressed?
I mean, if we had to put a time frame on it, 2 weeks, but honestly, our priorities are going to be emergencies and emergency-driven responses. A deep pothole on Washington Street out here that, like you said, affects 500 motorists a day is going to receive a higher priority than a shallow pothole on a dead-end street. We'll just have to work on prioritizing stuff, and again, emergencies and that kind of workload will come first. So I guess it had to put a time on it. You double the length of time to respond, but it really is going to be dependent on the type of request, the situation.
Okay, so what you're saying is it can vary, which I accept that. I understand that it's not all the same and emergencies happen, and the extent of difficulty of any given project is not the same from one to the next. But you're saying residents should basically expect for things to take about twice as long as they did before for see-click-fix requests. Okay.
If I had to put a time frame on it, yeah.
Okay. All right, I have an easier question. It's indicated in the chart that's been provided to counselors that there's going to be no commercial vehicles allowed on the composting site. And I got a question from a resident asking why, and I thought I would just post that to you today.
Basically, that's one of our largest drivers. The cost to operate the leaf site is up to about $200,000 a year. We used to, probably about pre-COVID, they used to be able to work with a company. They'd come in, they'd process the material, they'd screen it, they'd leave our leftovers. They would own the material, but they would perform the process for free. Wouldn't cost the town anything, so as the leaves broke down, we'd flip them, roll them. When it was ready, the contractor would come in, they'd use their equipment, their loaders, their everything. They would process, they would screen the material, they'd have clean compost. They would own 95% of the product. They'd usually leave roughly 5–10% back for residents for town use, but they would own the product at the cost of, they did all the work on it. After COVID, with the inflation, with the trucking costs, with the fuel costs, nobody offers a free option for processing the material anymore. So we've had to resort to the best of two bad options between hauling the material off-site and or paying a vendor to come in and screen it, which used to be free. So honestly, combination with the budget costs and with the reductions, I know the plan tentatively going through Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for residents only in an effort to try to cut down the volume of the material coming in. Hopefully, obviously, less material coming in means less material to move out, which means reduced costs. We are one of the few towns around that that do take landscaper material. Weymouth is resident only. A number of ones that we've reached out into the past are resident only, and then most of them are not open. A fair amount of them are not open 5 days a week like our site currently is. So yes, the plan, especially without the override, is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for residents only in an effort to reduce the volume, to reduce the costs associated with operating the site.
Okay.
Let me turn it over. And
Yeah.
then, yep. Councilor Maglio, did you have any other questions?
Excuse me.
Sorry,
yes,
you're on
thank
a
you.
country-
That's okay.
Would you like to go?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, for the no commercial vehicles, so they can't come in and drop off, is what you're saying?
Correct, yes. We issue contractor, if you're a town, Braintree-based, Braintree-registered business. Historically, in the past, we've issued a leaf site contractor permit. They can use it, then their dump trucks, the one-ton dump trucks, dump trailers, things like that. We charge them a fee. It had been stagnant at 1,500 for a number of years. Last year, we went up to 1,750. Our intention was to go to 2,000 this year, and then we've obviously had to reevaluate that process with the budget cuts. But yes, so we charged the contractor of a Braintree-based business, Braintree-registered business, and they had the option, they could buy this extra permit, and they could dump their residential, their commercial business up at the site.
Excellent, okay, thank you.
Counselor Reynolds?
Thank you, Mr. Hulk, for those answers. Just a quick follow-up on the leaf mulch site. I know that there is a program existing that you could get a one-day permit for dumping at the leaf mulch site.
We don't use it that often. The one-day thing is more for the recycling center, but yeah, go ahead.
And is that generally more residential versus commercial, or is it
Correct.
both?
Correct, residential.
It is-
They have a big job going on or something.
Would that continue?
No.
That would not continue. So the only one who would be allowed to dump at the leaf mulch site, and I think I've heard this, and not officially, but residents would pay something separate from the trash fee now to dump at the leaf mulch site?
Is currently being contemplated. There would be a
Contemplated.
$25 sticker fee for the recycling center and the composting site.
Great. And that $25 fee from residents would cover costs. The assumption is it would cover the cost of operating that site Friday through Sunday.
Correct.
Great, thank you. Are we, Madam Chair, are we open to any other DPW questions at this time?
Counselor Moore, did you have anything specific on the composting site before we move on?
No, Councilor Flaherty asked about the commercial usage of it, so I'm all set.
Thank you. Go right ahead,
All
Counselor
right,
Reynolds.
thank you very much. I'm just taking a look through, and one of the things that jumped out at me, and my apologies if this was covered by the director prior to my arrival this evening, and I'm looking at line 4003, DPW equipment maintenance, and you have zeroed out outside motor vehicle repairs, equipment repairs, tires and tubes, as well as gasoline and diesel fuel. Is that specific to just the DP? I know you have dedicated individuals.
If I may, so the O2 facilities, the O3 equipment repair, both reside under facilities. They were kind of broken out programs based on the older form of government and who kind of oversaw them. Was it last year or this year? Basically, there's an equipment, outside motor vehicle equipment and repairs, and there's a motor vehicle equipment and repairs lines in the O2 program. They are duplicated in the O3 program. It's just a consolidation to get all the funds in one location.
Okay, so you have $100,000 on the O2 under equipment repair? Is that what you're speaking to?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. And also additionally, you have in that grouping contract services of $12,400. Is that also maintenance related, those contract services? That would be page 28.
I don't know, perhaps Rob DeVito or Mike McGurty could explain what those
Certainly.
are. I don't believe it's necessarily towards the working on of outside vehicles, but.
Before you
it's
go,
on the
just
record.
one quick question. Are all maintenance-related work in DPW done by the team overseen by the facilities?
For the buildings,
Equipment, vehicle maintenance?
vehicle maintenance. Yep, equipment. But, yeah, so that's kind of how it's
That's
spelled
my
out.
primary question, is equipment and vehicles
Yes,
maintenance.
they're all under facilities, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So certainly Mr. McGurty would come up, that would be great.
Okay.
Or Rob also, if you could come, perhaps.
Thank you, Mr. McGurty. Thank you, Rob.
Good evening, gentlemen. Good to see you.
Good evening, Councilor.
Okay, so I want to make, I'm just going to make my questions very specific. It's around your maintenance program for DPW vehicles and the equipment that the DPW teams use. So all of that is consolidated under the Director of Facilities, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, great. And that's something you've had for a little while.
Yes.
Right, I think it's a good idea. So what would have been the difference between line item 03 and 02, just at a high level?
I don't know the history behind the two different programs, but we looked at this, and there's 5 accounts in the 03 equipment maintenance program. There was gasoline, diesel, motor vehicle repairs, tires and tubes. Those same 5 accounts reside in the facilities program as well, so it just made sense to us to consolidate those 5 accounts in one program.
Okay.
In the past, I think what they would do is they would find the program that had the available budget and just charge it to that program, which didn't really make too much sense to us.
Okay, so this is more of a cleanup process?
Yes,
You're not
yes.
eliminating?
Exactly.
Thank you, because
So the
that's what I
prior
want.
budget was consolidated into the facilities program.
Got it, okay, great, that's great. Then one remaining question I would have is that welding repairs in Program 02 is zeroed out as well. Is that something, the plan, is that something that you do in-house by skill that's on your own labor? And I'll
That
let-
is correct. When we took over and created the facilities department, we were given a hodgepodge of different budgets. And in those, you would have welding repair, which it should have just been under general vehicle repair and maintenance because we have a welder on staff. So we just basically, again, zeroed that out because it was one of those items that had like $3,500 in it at one point. It was never really used unless you specifically did a welding project and remembered that you even had that account.
Terrific. So I guess it's safe for me to say you eliminated something that you didn't need.
Correct.
In the line item because it was already addressed.
Right, and you have to streamline it. You don't want 40 different line items where you're picking money out, paying for tractor tires out of the DPW account, and the
Sure.
facilities account is paying for pickup truck tires, so it only made sense.
Just to point out, it looks like in FY22, $72 was spent on welding repairs. So that's not to say there weren't welding repairs in that year. Those invoices might have gone paid to a different account. So it gets convoluted when you have many accounts specific to a particular function. So it's probably a lot easier just to have one, not a catch-all account for everything, but something more streamlined, so you're not trying to code a particular invoice that you may not know whether it's welding repairs or building repairs or something to that effect.
Excellent. You've answered my questions. Thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate it,
Councilor
ma'am.
Just one second, Councilor Morton. I do want to acknowledge, I recognize that some of this, and especially for the staff who's here, thank you, seems maybe like minutia. However, the Public Works Department is almost 10% of our entire town budget, and we all know how critical it is. So I will just say, on behalf of the committee, thank you for bearing with us. I will now turn it over to Councilor Moran.
Thank you. Just to follow up on the question about gasoline, and now it's in facilities and equipment maintenance. You're quoting 100,000 for it, and your budget last year, FY24 revised was 170. Is 100 realistic?
It's somewhat realistic. We accounted for the fact in FY23 there was an increase in fuel costs, which translated to the FY24 budget. Fuel costs have come down, so that's why the budget has come down. It's not an exact science, but that was a methodology behind that budget.
It's just, we're trying to, I think in a lot of the other lines that we're seeing increases on, there's a reality-based cost that is based on what supplemental requests were in previous years. And I don't think that's gonna happen here. I don't think there's any way you're gonna get by with 100 grand on I always screwed this budget up in Norwell when I was town administrator. I think this is way too low.
You very well may be right. Ben can talk about usage.
If I may, on the gas, we have our roughly, our estimated usage for the year, the period, what we purchase. We are just coming out of a 2-year lock-in, so August, September, we will be going kind of back to market. It's like a futures. They give you, and you can sign up for a year.
So you're
you can sign
using a
up for 6 months.
consortium-based thing, and you're
So
using the
yes.
pumps and...
Yep, we're using the consortium. We have to go out again in August, but we did, when we were prepping for the budget, we called for the number. So and again, we based it off of pretty good what it would have cost us, I don't know, March.
Yep.
We got the report from the consortium. If we had purchased fuel in March, it would have been this price, which was very in line with where we are now, plus or minus, 5-6 cents. So we do feel confident that that number, barring a, dramatic turn in the market, will be good.
And it's a lot better price than what we had going into FY24.
Okay. All right. I'm not going to get... I'm going to be very understanding if this is low. I just want you to know
You
that.
heard it here first.
Okay?
So we have a pass to be wrong, is that what you're saying?
I think it'll be a miracle, unless you buy in a bunch of hybrids, it'll be a miracle if you get through with 100,000 in this line. So, anyway, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Seeing as we have Mr. McGurty at the table, I think now is a good time to turn to facilities. I don't know if, Councillor Flaherty, you want to start?
Certainly. Thank you. Last year at this time, you were talking about kind of a raft of anticipated maintenance projects that you were tasking your guys to work on the buildings, in the schools and other town buildings across town. And now we are looking at reduced manpower, and I'm wondering if you can provide some color on the extent to which you've needed to adjust your anticipated schedule for projected maintenance projects across town. Can you just speak broadly of like what you're prioritizing and the things that you've kind of backburnered?
Certainly. We more than likely will not be taking on any of the larger projects of renovation work like we had in the past, such as the Doherty Gym. We finished up to a certain point at about 90% complete at the Old South Middle School. We're going to concentrate at this point with our staff to maintain the buildings, the schools. There's an awful lot of work that's required within them. So we're going to just concentrate on our maintenance field staff in that area, handling our work orders on a day-to-day basis, and a number of selected projects that we'll be tackling this fiscal year coming up. We will see some issues that we'll be dealing with the schools, dealing with the custodial staff cutbacks that we'll have to be making with this budget. Right now, we're putting together a plan to set up a schedule to see how that we can operate better, more efficiently. Those are some of the issues that concern us with regards to our schools. So it's going to be a big task for us. We'll know better when we can break down the amount of people we'll have in each building. We have a pretty good idea what we'll be looking at this point. It depends on how we address it, whether or not we have an override or we don't have an override. So, a number of issues with regards to the facilities in general, we are going to move forward. There will need to be a big plan to involve school buildings, to what we'll be dealing with in the future. As it stands right now, we'll have 2 buildings that are closed. There's talk of moving schools around, potentially. One of our issues is it's difficult to set long-term goals when you're not really sure what the long-term is. So that's one of our biggest issues moving forward, knowing what tomorrow will look like.
Okay, that does make sense. You were mentioning custodians,
Yes.
and I was hoping you could clarify on the, on page 57 of the budget detail report, it shows where custodians are assigned, and I can see that there's 3 at each elementary school and a certain number for each middle school, but I know there must be custodians assigned to Braintree High School. Can you tell
Yeah.
me how many?
Braintree High School,
15 currently,
thank you.
15.
yes.
Okay. And that's how many there are now. In the coming year, if the override does not pass, how many will there be?
That's where the allocation of custodians, we'll have to work that part out. We're not really sure exactly at this point. We're looking at possibly 12, but we're not committed to that number at this point. We still have to work through all the details of each school.
Of course.
Quick follow-up on that, and thank you, Counselor Flaherty, because when I was going through the line items, it looked like BHS custodians were budgeted this current fiscal year at $840,000 and next year at $340,000.
Yes.
That's because the cuts that we had to implement, we had to consolidate into one school. We didn't know what schools were going to be impacted at that point, so we just used that as a placeholder for those cuts. That's not to say
Okay.
BHS itself is going to be cut to that extent. Because
Okay.
we don't know where the heads are going to end up at this point, because there's a list of seniority for people. You know, if cuts are to happen, we have to look at that list of seniority to see where those people are housed, what school they're at. So then we might have to reallocate people at that point. But we need a place to put that placeholder.
Okay, and that represents the 11
Yes, yes.
positions. Okay, thank you for clarifying. Thank you, Counselor.
No, I think those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. School facilities or facilities in general, Counselor Moran?
Thank you. I just want to go, now, this category or this department is one of the few that is seeing a significant increase in budget, if I'm reading it correctly. But I think that's an attempt, again, to capture actual costs rather than pencil something in and then have a supplemental appropriation going forward. You know, I'm seeing a substantial increase in casual employees, in overtime, in lighting, and again, utilities budget was a flashpoint for this committee this year, and the supplemental that had to go through. Natural gas is seeing a large revision, equipment repair, and again, the one that stuck out that was being reduced was gas. So, you know, that was a concern of mine. Could you confirm for me that this is basically an attempt to give actual figures that would have in the past been dealt with in a supplemental appropriation? So we're just appropriating from the get-go and not having to supplement it in the future?
For utilities, yes, yes.
What about for the other items that I mentioned, the casual employees, the overtime?
That was our best estimate, assuming that 11 custodians would be cut. So the remaining custodians would have to work more in overtime to cover needs.
And we do get quite a bit of help from our casual employees. We have a number of talented individuals that we have some master carpenters that work part-time for us. We also have an electrician that comes in on a casual part-time basis to pick up some of the slack. So the casual line item is critical for us, the overtime as well. With the 2 new middle schools online, there's an awful lot of landscaping involved, so we don't have staff to take care of those schools at this point. So we have staff talented enough to handle it, but we have to put them on selective overtime. Some Saturdays, they'll go around and they'll help clean up a number of our schools on the exterior.
I will say, with those accounts, casuals and overtime, it's a little bit of a guesswork. When you're cutting 11 custodians, it's hard to tell how much overtime is going to be needed for the remaining staff.
No, I appreciate it, and this is just for perspective, this is the department where the majority of the reduction in staff is coming from. It's projected 11 here, 6 in highway, and 3 in facilities and equipment that I could identify. So this is the one that is going to have the greatest adverse impact, and so you're budgeting through estimate rather than through experience.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Counselor Reynolds?
I'm trying to figure out how to best frame this question. My question is one of due diligence, and it's not to be construed as if that I'm advocating for this. But have there been any other ideas or suggestions or potential solutions to saving money in facilities by outsourcing custodial services?
That is a subject that we did investigate, and there were numbers involved with that. They were sizable, and it was determined that the best way forward for us was not to outsource at this time, but to attempt to maintain services and with the cuts that we're going to be dealing with.
So, again, if you would just indulge my curiosity, and I'm not advocating, but again, what is healthy for us in this time that we find ourselves in is open dialogue about potential other paths to finding savings and for identifying alternate uses to the priority areas that we have due to our limited funding.
Sure.
Significant, I should say, to me, the reason I bring that topic up of custodial services is because of the sheer number. And due to services that are available, contract services that are available in this field. They're numerous. So the question should be asked, and the numbers, if there have been any diligence done to point to say, well, let's just look at some of these numbers. What potential savings could we realize? What would be the pro and the con of the drop-off, if you will? What would you be willing to accept in terms of familiarity with buildings? Because another consideration in this type of a conversation as you deliberate through it is that the name of the program escapes me, but as part of the cost savings that was signed about 5 years ago for ESCO, was it?
That would be the NORESCO program.
NORESCO,
Correct.
Right, NORESCO, thank you.
You're welcome.
That as part of that program, I believe one of the suggested, and I don't want to say a requirement, but it could have been a requirement or a suggested implementation step would have been that you have experts in each building who know that building, who would bring efficiencies in the overall management of the NORESCO goals. Anything that you'd like to comment on that, Mr. McCurdy?
Sure. If we take a step back, we did look at outsourcing. It was a savings of, what was the number, Rob?
The estimate we got for custodial services were going to be about 1.2 million. The current labor cost of our custodian are around 3 million. But the custodial services were going to be only at nighttime, which necessitated that we would have to hire back. We estimated about 10 people to work during the days because the outsourced company would only work 2 to 10, 3 to 11. Mm-hmm. So we would want someone in each school building during the day.
Right, and just as you had mentioned earlier, Counselor, our idea would be to have that individual located in each of those buildings would be a building maintenance technician that would have full control of the building to make up the difference. That would be in place of having a custodian in the building in the mornings. You would have a building maintenance tech, and some of the custodians that presently work there may be those individuals with the proper training. So we did look at that aspect of trying to save some money. Our numbers came out at close to 1.8 million.
Okay. So your initial deliberations or due diligence on this particular potential option at this point isn't going any further as it pertains to this year's budget?
That's correct.
Okay. But it was an interesting exercise, and as difficult as an option that may be to look at, and it is a difficult option because there's people involved, we're in a very difficult situation. So I appreciate that you've taken that time and that to truly pull back the covers and look as closely as possible as you can for potential solutions to the revenues and the cost, covering the costs as we go into this budget season. So thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Reynolds. Councilor Maglio?
When we were here at this time last year, you had mentioned a few of the projects you were working on that there were some savings involved. Like at the time it was heat switches, there were some incentives out there for that to get reimbursements. You mentioned the Green Communities Fund and that there are opportunities for efficiencies and money and rebates and things. Has there been an opportunity for someone to look into those kinds of possibilities for our schools?
Yes. Right now, we are in the process of putting together a grant, hopefully for $175,000 for some HVAC work. Since we stepped away from the schools, we're also may have the potential to use that for some of our town buildings as well. We were up at the high school today taking inventory on some of our rooftop exhaust units, which would fall in that category of replacement. So we are working that. Our Green Communities money is still working for us. We're at the Council on Aging. This will be our fourth project with that Green Communities money. We've got 15 tons of heating and cooling that will be added to the building, which will hopefully make the steam system in that building the secondary instead of the primary heat. Because as we look at our buildings that have steam heat in them, you can tell if I put the bills on the table which ones have steam heat and which ones don't, because their prices are 75% higher based on the square footage. So these are positive things that we're doing. And we're going to take advantage of them. There's great rebates in the heat pumps. One of our problems with the heat pumps, which is I would love to put them in all our older schools, but the problem is our electrical systems in those buildings are so antiquated that the upgrade for the electrical would probably cost us $1 million per school, but with that investment, we would be getting heat pump, air conditioning, heating units, and saving on, our utility bills, because we get great rates here in Braintree. We'd like to take advantage of it for the schools.
So that fund is being spent down?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Moore, did you have anything on facilities? Okay. Thank you, Mr. McGurty. I have a few questions. Again, following up on some of the discussion we had same time last year. My recollection is that there was an expense with East Middle School. I was trying to find in my notes if I had the dollar figure. My recollection, it was close to $100,000 we had spent on some kind of faulty electrical system. Has that been remedied, and is there a similar problem going on with South?
No, actually, it was the heat pumps that were installed at East, and it was a multiple of issues. Some were related to the manufacturer, some were related to the installation. So it was a bad combination of two different items that weren't working together. We did spend over $100,000 last year. We have fared much better this winter with those units, but as we switch over into the cooling season, we'll have a better idea of where we stand. I think we're in a much better place this year. We have much better control, and I think we're going to be in much better shape than we anticipated, with our fingers crossed. South Junior High is still under warranty, so we're in that building right now doing our monitoring of those systems. We now switch from the heating season to the cooling season, and that's where our biggest test is going to come within that school system. The systems in the two buildings are slightly different, so it's apples and oranges. I do not anticipate the same problems we have at East, where East was a retrofit and a new construction together. South being a brand-new school, you can limit that type of, those types of issues. So moving forward on South, and we're in the middle of gathering more data on how our equipment is working, but unlike East, we have competent people that are on top of this right from the get-go. We've been involved with it since we got it involved with the schools, from the build-out to where we stand right now.
So that $100,000, we had to eat that cost. That was not reimbursable from the manufacturer?
That is correct. Some of the items that we received, unfortunately, the equipment you grab, the warranty is for 1 year. We went through COVID, so we never put the building under a full test. So unfortunately, a lot of these problems started popping up after the warranties had expired. The warranties on the equipment themselves, we received a number of free parts. The problem with the parts is the parts are cheap compared to recharging the equipment and the labor to do the work. So you may get an $800 pump, but it may be a $7,000 fee to put it all back together.
So have we then put South through a full test so that we don't have the same issue? Have we done that work?
Yes, we have been working with that equipment. That equipment has been operational throughout the winter season. So we're anticipating that it's going to be running properly for us. Again, as the weather breaks, we'll be testing the air conditioning side of those units. And I'm hoping that everything will be working the way it's supposed to. That's,
Okay. Yes, I too hope that is the case. And while we have good electrical rates, I know we also had an issue with the lights. Has that been remedied? So we're not paying erroneous lighting fees that we don't need to pay?
No, that's correct. The lighting was actually, well, we have control of the lighting. The lighting works fine. It works as it was designed, and it's operating properly. You'll get a complaint now and again with an outside light on a building that comes up. South, we have 3 lights that we're having issues with in the parking lot. They're highlights. It's a mechanical issue that we're working on. They ordered a few new relays that when they come in, we will set and reboot that equipment. But we've controlled it so it's not lighting up the parking lot at night, upsetting the neighbors. But South is under control and East is under control.
Well, it's a very bitter pill to swallow when we have brand-new buildings that we are throwing money away on. So I'm hopeful that those things have been and will continue to be remedied. Are we fully, and I know we talked about, again, going back to some of the year-over-year things we've talked about with facilities, is the asbestos remediation complete at all the schools?
No, and that is a long-term project. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. We schedule a certain amount of work to be done. We go after the issues that are the most critical, and we remove those in a timely fashion. Each of the buildings, or older buildings, you will find asbestos in them. Our job is to make sure that they're safely protected and they're secured, and that's what we do. We inspect the buildings every 6 months, and then our staff is going to get some more training in July so that everyone is basically a mandated reporter to any kind of issue that we would have with our asbestos pipe covering. Most of it is in our basement areas. Some of the closets in the older schools, you'll find a steam pipe that may have asbestos insulated wrapping on it, but it's secured. It's not exposing any of the children or anything like that.
So, because we only have $20,000 budgeted for that this year,
That's correct.
and that's not a restoration item with the override?
That's correct. We were given a capital account for asbestos abatement for $1.5 million, and that's the one that we would use for any substantial projects that we would put together and put out to bid. The $20,000 that we had, we would use that for emergency services. If a pipe broke in a certain location, like that.
That's very helpful, thank you. And then, again, Mr. McGurty, last year you had provided the council with an overview of each of the school buildings, I believe, and some of the town buildings where you had work done and outlined that. Is that something you have at the ready so we can understand? Councilor Flaherty had asked last year that each of the town buildings be broken out. I see that town hall's been removed as a line item.
Correct. We combine those to clean up the budgeting.
So I guess it's a two-part question. Do we have what we've done in the schools over the last fiscal year and what our plan is for going forward with the budget we have this year? Is that something, and if you don't have it tonight, that's fine, but if that's something that we could put a request in for, I think that would be very helpful to understand the magnitude of what has been done and what's left to do.
Sure. There's a lifetime left to do, unfortunately, with the asbestos. It's everywhere. It's everywhere in the country. It's everywhere.
Well,
in the
I
world.
just meant in general
Sure.
on the
Sure.
schools.
We set some priorities. I went over them with the mayor briefly just the other day. We have a number of projects. We have the library, for instance, the rooftop units. We've got to replace those. We have the rooftop units at the police station. We're having those engineered as we speak for a plan to replace those. We're looking at putting a new steam boiler, unfortunately steam boiler, at the Hollis School. We also have a burner that we have to install at the Highland School. And
You don't need to go through the whole list now, but thank you. I know, I figured you might have it off the top of your head. But if we can get a list of that and
We'd be
an
happy to do that.
understanding, and again, like
Certainly.
if we're investing in steam boilers that are exorbitantly expensive and not considered clean energy, then we may want to, I'd like to understand that, but that's for another
Sure.
time. So the town hall had previously been pulled out as a line item for its own maintenance. Now it is zeroed out. So where are all the town building maintenance? Is it captured in one item in here, or?
Yes, they would fall under general building repairs under facilities. So
Okay.
that we don't have all these line items.
That program was never an all-encompassing view of the maintenance of Town Hall. It didn't encompass all the repairs that were being done here. It didn't include custodial supplies or custodial costs or anything like that. Again, that's a historical thing that I'm not really sure why that was set up in the past.
Okay.
That was another consolidation effort similar to the equipment maintenance program that we rolled into the facilities program.
A cleanup on the line
Correct,
items?
correct.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. Okay, I think my last question for you, Mr. McGurty. The school emergency generator, $10,000. Is that to cover fuel?
No, that is, the emergency generators in the schools have to be inspected quarterly. So it requires outside vendors to come in. They will maintenance the equipment. If something needs to be repaired, we have to be, the
Okay.
generator at the high school's antiquated, so anytime you work on it, it's expensive.
Okay. Sorry, one more question. School bus maintenance, does that fall under you, Mr. McGurty, or not?
The school budget maintenance?
School bus?
Oh, bus, I'm sorry. It's the acoustics. No, we do not handle the buses. We did do repairs down there for some electrical outlets and some electrical panel that supplies the electrical outlets for the buses.
So school bus is under schools
That
department?
is correct.
Okay, I will hold that for that night then. That is all. Counselor Maglio? Oh, thank you for letting me go first. Sorry about that.
I have one more question, and it has to do with the landscaping at East and South. Where does that fall? Doing the landscaping of all of the plantings that were part of the two new builds and maintaining that?
Right, that falls under facilities.
It does, okay.
And East just got a haircut over there because it was so growing out of control. The custodial staff couldn't keep up with it, so we had to send in, the facility staff to go up there at the direction of the principal and remove a lot of the items that had overgrown and just weren't kept properly. So unfortunately for these two schools, they look great the first 2 years. If you don't have it in your budget and staffed properly, they get out of control, and they get out of control pretty quickly because they do a lot of plantings close to give it that really nice, attractive look in the first year, but they're so close together planted, they grow so quickly that now you're in there, now you have to remove some of the vegetation. So it's a difficult job.
Okay.
Ideally, we would have hired 1 or 2 people just devoted to do the landscaping, but again, the way the budget is, we just couldn't.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Maglio. Other questions for Mr. McGurty while he's at the podium? Okay. I think you're free to go back to your seat. Don't leave us all together. There might be more. Thank you very much, both of you. I appreciate it. All right. Thank you, Director Arsenal. So are there other DPW questions for Director Arsenal or other? Yes, Counselor Reynolds.
Thank you, ma'am. First, I'd like to ask a question if the town engineer also, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
So this is more of a, my questions are more towards where you see our streets programs evolving. We know that we have funding that we get from the state in Chapter 90. However, I think this year we're getting not as much as we had anticipated.
Actually, Councilor, we're actually getting a little bit more than we anticipated this year.
Very
in Chapter
good.
90 funding, correct. The state, through what was sort of informally known as the millionaire tax, the governor did appropriate some state funding from that fund to go towards transportation programs. So approximately 400,000 additional dollars are coming to the town of Braintree.
Just in this fiscal year. Is that something that you'd put to work this construction season?
We can start to, yes.
Okay. Well, that is excellent news. So on that topic, as you see this roads program, I look around town and I know that we still have a lot of need, right? In a lot of different places. There's been a lot of work that's been done. The money has been challenging in order to fund all of the work that we'd like to see get done. So I applaud you for what you've been able to accomplish. But as you know, one of the topics that are kind of one of my, you could call me a pain in the neck about, when it comes to road surfacing, and we talk about, and I know you've shared some of your philosophies with me, but traffic calming is a topic that we have looked at as a town in the past. We've gone out and we've seen other communities how they've been used. There's certain schools of thought that say, well, it's not an exact science. It's just sometimes it doesn't work, other times it does, right? It's like a lot of emerging trends or technologies that there's a shakeout. And I focus on this type of a program because traffic safety is a big, big concern in our town. As a district counselor, I get all kinds of calls and emails about traffic. and speeding cars. And we know the police department started a traffic enforcement team. However, due to our budgets, they cannot continue that team. It was a somewhat, they did yeoman's work for having a two-person team. Sure. Similar to yourself is that you folks do yeoman's work with not a full complement of engineers and designers, et cetera, due to past budget constraints and obviously current budget constraints. So I'm thinking in terms of where we're seeing more money perhaps coming in from this millionaire's tax, which is my recollection that that money is earmarked by law towards transportation and education. Two very worthy and underfunded areas in our state. So, question is this: would you see an opportunity for this type of traffic calming as a growing, as let's just say, more eyes and interest that it could be something to help us as a community?
Yeah, generally speaking, I think the money can, that money is earmarked, what could be used for roadway improvements. It could also be used for traffic-related expenses.
Great. And I know that you don't design roads right now in order to work on them next week or the month later. You're generally speaking months out or a year out or so.
Yeah, generally speaking, we're trying to forecast years out.
Correct.
In terms of what we're planning, correct.
Right. So in that forecasting exercise, I would be interested to know if, as we move forward, that there would be some interest in, as us looking as part of our design, we know what the infrastructure underneath the road should be like, we know what the sidewalks ideally should be like because of our ADA requirements and our transition plans, mandates, et cetera, that it potentially could be something beneficial to us in assisting and going, impacting in a positive way some of our side streets, some of our collector roads. But due to the fact of what types of roads they are, I know that there'd be more of a practicality in some cases versus others.
That's correct. And that is something, just, for everybody's benefit, that is something that we do typically look at when we are undertaking road projects. We do look at ways to build into those projects safety improvements and sometimes calming improvements if possible, reducing, shortening radii at corners to kind of slow cars down as they're turning, making things safer for pedestrians and crosswalks and those sorts of things.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I think it's an important conversation for us to have. It is something that I will be pursuing through with the mayor's office on that as a topic of interest, as a topic of perhaps incorporating into our future designs. And obviously, you would have a very big part in that conversation, the DPW. I know that the director is an engineer himself, so I'd be very interested as we move forward.
Sure.
That is all I have for the traffic. All right, I have one other question. I don't know if there's another opportunity for someone who wanted to follow up on my question.
Thank you, Councilor Reynolds. Anything else for Mr. Thompson, Town Engineering, or Traffic?
Okay, my next question would be...
Oh, hold on one second,
yeah.
Councilor Reynolds. Councilor Maglio.
Thank you. This is very specific. Has there been any movement forward on the Allen Street, the connection with the Highway Department for the change in direction that will happen?
On Allen Street?
On Allen Street off of Quincy Ave.
I guess I can just kind of give a brief update for everybody, but I don't think there's any new information to you specifically. But
Okay.
Essentially, we do have federally earmarked funds and also a state grant that will be going towards the reconstruction of Allen Street. Because of the use of federally earmarked money, the state has to administer the project as opposed to the town. So the town has already completed or nearly completed a design and submitted that design to Mass DOT, who is currently doing a thorough design review. When they complete their design review, there will be a series of public outreach to the community so that residents can take a look at the design and provide comment. And then ultimately, the goal would be to construct the project next calendar year, or start constructing the project next calendar year.
Excellent, that's really helpful. Just an approximate time that you think the community could take a look at the plans?
I wouldn't want to speculate because Mass DOT, is a big agency and they sort of have a very thorough review process. But if I had to take a stab, I would probably say by the late summer.
Late summer, maybe
if I had to
fall.
guess.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Councilor Maglio. Councilor Reynolds, I just want to say it is almost 8, so what I was thinking, if it's amenable to my colleagues on the committee, is we'll finish with general DPW, and then if there's a motion, we maybe take a 5-minute recess and move on to the enterprise funds. If everyone can hang with us a little longer, that would be super. So, Councilor Reynolds?
One question I have for environmental affairs and waste collection.
I have one too.
Okay.
Maybe it's the same one.
Could be the same one. Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening.
It's good to see you. One question I had was, we know that recycling did a 180 on us as an opportunity for us to be able to generate revenues in the past, and now that it's a cost center, it's costing us to get rid of that. So my first question is, recycling processing. Could you explain to me exactly what that line item is?
There's a cost, a determined cost, that fluctuates month to month, and it's based on international markets as well as local markets, what they can sort out, what they can sell, and what they get for it. So there's a formula in our contract, our agreement, because the contract has a top end, but traditionally, what we have done is to ask for supplemental funds when it's gone over and put money back in the general fund when it hasn't. We have no way of determining it. We've taken some steps with Waste Management that owns the facility. It's called Recycle America in Avon. There are some additional assessments that can be made against our recycling, and we have an agreement with them to hold our current contamination rate, which is below 10%, which is their threshold where they start assessing people. So we're going into our 3rd year without an audit of our material to determine whether or not there needs to be an additional assessment because of the performance that we've been able to demonstrate, because of the investment that we've made in auditing on the streets and the educational programs that we put in place. I suspect in trying to determine what the rates are going to be this year, cardboard has rebounded. We're now getting $62 a ton for cardboard, but we're only sending a ton of cardboard a week to the facility. The cost for all of the other recycling has stabilized. It has dropped from about $90 a ton down to about $52, $53 a ton at the present time. Next month, the bottom could drop out of it again. There's no way to determine it.
Understood. Understood. Thank you. That's very thorough, and congratulations on that record that you have accomplished in terms of avoiding contamination, I should say. So the reason I asked that question is that I did see that you dropped down from a line item value of 202,900 down to 165,000. Is that attributable to what you have just explained to me?
The bulk of it is yes. We're estimating that the cost will continue to decline, not at the rate that they have over the last 3 or 4 months, but we're projecting that we'll show some savings as a result of that. Proof will be in the pudding.
Well, I have confidence in you. You've run a very tight shop, very efficient shop through the years, and Braintree is very fortunate to have you working the way you have for our community in this important area. So thank you on that. My last question to you, sir, is where are we with the current trash collection contract? What year are we in? And when's
We're going into our second year of the contract. We have a 5-year contract.
5
and
years?
We're going into our second year, yes.
Got it. All right. Thank you. That's all I had, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Counselor Reynolds. Any other questions for Mr. Kuntz? Just one point of clarification on the refuse collection. It appears to me that the budget for FY 2025 does include oh, maybe it does not. I guess this is my question. Does the FY 25 proposed budget include the increase to the trash fee, which I believe was going to be a $500,000 gain?
No.
Why is that? Where would that show up?
In our local receipts forecast.
Okay,
So it's only
okay.
just bringing up the revenue
Right.
associated with those revenue
Thank you
sources.
for that reminder. Okay, yep, thank you for that. All right, any other questions? Are there any other DPW questions?
Thank you.
General GPW. Okay. Is there a motion for a 5-minute recess?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, we will come back in session at 8:10. Thank you, everyone. All right, thank you, everyone. We are back in session with the Ways and Means Committee Monday, May 13th, 2024 at 8:10 p.m. We are now moving on to 24020 Mayor, and it will be Section 436, the Sewer Enterprise Fund. It doesn't get more exciting than this. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Dutton, who is the Commissioner of our Water Department and Sewer Department. If you want to start off with a brief summary, or we can just...
Oh, you can just go right ahead.
Okay. In that case, I will open it up to committee members for questions, comments. While we're waiting, and Director Esmond, please correct me if I'm incorrect on this. However, just for residents who may be watching from home, an enterprise fund is a self-funding account. So this is wholly separate from our operating budget, and they're funded through the fees that we pay for the services of our, in this case, sewer department. Thank you.
Sorry. I think probably the name enterprise sometimes can be maybe off the mark. There's a little bit of sort of accounting, financial reporting nuance in that, but the fundamental piece of this is that it's self-sustained from revenues that are generated from the operations of the activities. Ratepayers or customers, depending on what it is, fund it. And the town does have a indirect cost recovery process for us to recover allocated costs from the funds, tied back typically to back office, accounting, HR, those purchasing types of support that are received by the fund that we do recover, and then we record the revenues in the other financing activities in our annual forecasts.
Thank you so much. I know it can be confusing for people to keep all the different funding sources straight, so appreciate that explanation. Councilor Moran?
My only question, Lou, is just on the sewer assessment from the MWRA. We've got it at 10.9 right now, and that's what we had it at in FY23. Are we anticipating that that's going to stay in that ballpark, or are we going to get a higher assessment, or do we know?
The range that we had gotten, we had 2 reports that came in. They haven't finalized it yet. I believe it was 0.3%, correct me if I'm wrong, or to 3% of a decrease. So we just don't know what it's going to be, but that's what the preliminary report had dictated.
All right, and were there to be a variant in that, it would be addressed through rates, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Moran. Councilor Reynolds?
Madam Chair, and welcome. Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
All right. So I saw in the bond principal payments under sewer debt principal, line item 43650. Pardon me, 43651. You're actually gone down $1,000 from a last year of $2,750 down this year to $1,750. Is this a result of anything to do with the operations, or is this just well, actually it doesn't result with that. It's what we have out there for bonds presently.
Correct.
And is there any kind of background you can give me a little bit on that? I mean, it's a good story. Are you anticipating any other bonds this year or any other types of operations coming up over the next year in this particular category that may need to be issued for any type of work?
Yeah, the main part of the bonding for the sewer side is the I&I work that we do. which right now is, it's part grant, part bond. And I believe it's 25% bond and 75% grant right now. So any costs that are incurred will, be put into that bonding. So we do have I&I work that we're doing this year that we will be bonding for that.
So every year you're issuing a bond. I mean, I believe we just voted on that.
Yes.
Right.
We also have the, if I,
Certainly.
we also have the Tri-Town water treatment plant project, so not for sewer, I guess, though, yeah, if you're specific to sewer, so. But as far as bonding, the sewer treatment plant is a significant amount, so.
Right, well, that was, actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to ask, just to clarify my understanding as correct, that anything to do with the sewer has nothing to do with the water treatment plant.
Correct.
Yes,
It's completely separate.
yes.
Okay. Thanks, just for confirming that. And I think that's an important note for the public also to understand. As the chair pointed out, this is the monies that are spent and raised in the water and sewer have nothing at all to do, completely separate from our operating budget, the town's operating budget.
And also, as far as the bonding and all that, I'm not an expert on the financing side, so it usually comes from the finance department, kind of gives us an idea of what we need, what we might need, so.
Okay. The only other question I had for you here is workers' compensation has gone up from 81.5 to 150,000.
I would have to ask Mike to comment on that.
Do we know what that is? Is anticipation? Is there somebody who has been injured? Are there just some kind of a actuary or what?
Typically, what I try to do is I try to put in what, the past few years have shown me, so I don't know if that's gone up significantly. I'm not really entirely sure why. So.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we used a number that was based on us trying to be anticipating potential cost exposure, but not anticipating any singular incident or accident or anything along those lines.
Okay. Thank you. That is all I have, Madam Chair.
Councilor Maglio?
Thank you very much. So the questions that I have go back to kind of the issues that I typically bring up with you around the sewage outflows in the Four River Basin. And we did talk about this a week ago. It's all kind of blending together at this point, but we talked more about the financial implications of the expense of that work. And I'm wondering if you can give a bit of an overview as to where we are with that on the more technical side. There have been many hundreds of thousands of gallons that have been released into the Four River over the past year because of storms. How close are we to having some other option or better filters or some other way to keep raw sewage out of the Four River?
Well, it's an ongoing process, so we're constantly analyzing and looking at every year we have a program, as Lou had said, and we every year try to get more data and try to get mitigation. And so we line pipes whenever we can, as much as we can. We look at areas where infiltration is coming in, and we have found some areas that do have infiltration, and we're just constantly working it. We've started the process of this whole program many years ago, and it'll be continuing many years later. To try to constantly mitigate, because by the time you go through the entire community, you're going to find the original piping may have issues, that you originally looked at in the beginning and felt they were okay, and now they have issues. So it's a constantly dynamic situation, and we're trying as hard as we can to find any infiltration into the system that would make us have to really, have it discharge. And that's the last thing we want to have happen, but we're constantly trying to find new ways of trying to mitigate that. But unfortunately, we're not there yet, but we're trying as hard as we can to mitigate as much as we can.
I suggest, because I know this is, and it's a huge environmental issue, might I suggest a referral to the DPW committee so we could delve into the specifics of how that mitigation works, what the plan is, what the timeline is, what's the sequencing of, pipe importance, and the environmental, how the water, I think that this is worthy of a detailed conversation if you're amenable to that suggestion.
Absolutely. Yep.
Clerk Semino, do you mind taking that as follow-up for Council President, please? Thank you. Anything else?
Thank you. No, that's it. Thanks.
Did you have anything?
I have just a quick question. When I look at the line that's marked system rehabilitation on page 5 of 7, the costs are just so variable year over year. And this year looks to me to be maybe a really nice average of the last 4 years, but I'm wondering if you can explain to me what causes the variability there.
Mostly what's been causing the variability lately is just the price of materials. Just things have skyrocketed in the past 3 years so much. Perfect example, fire hydrants used to cost about, anywhere from $2,300 to $2,500. Now, they're at like $3,800 to $4,000. So with the cost of materials, it varies. Precious metals go up and down all the time. So we're trying, to find a number that we're comfortable with that will be able to do what we need to do out in the system and do the repairs and the maintenance that are required.
Okay. What are the main materials that you're talking about?
Piping, mostly copper, iron, fittings that are brass.
Okay.
So it all factors in.
Okay, and my other question was to do with the chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
We have a $400,000 proposed expenditure for chemicals, which is more than $100,000 greater than past years. So can you describe the reason for that increase?
Bids came in and everything went up. So we have to do it. There's no way around it, unfortunately.
Okay, so it's just market cost of the chemicals. What are the chemicals that you're referring to there?
Chlorine, polyaluminum chloride, sodium hydroxide, and phosphate.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Questions? Mr. Dutton, can you just explain, I guess the two parts, how are the sewer rates calculated, and also is there any expected increase in sewer rates that you would expect in the coming fiscal year for ratepayers?
Right now, every year, the Abrahams Group does a full rate study. We're still waiting for that to come in. We have not received it yet. I was in contact with him last week, and he needed some additional information, which he was given that information, so hopefully we're going to hear from him by the end of this week.
Did you say Abraham's Group?
Yes.
Abrams.
Oh, sorry, Abrams.
Abrams, okay. If and when that's available, if the committee can get a copy, that would be excellent. Thank you. All right, should we move on to water? All right, let's move on to water. Water Enterprise Fund. I think that's still you, Mr. Dutton.
Yeah.
Maybe if you wouldn't mind indulging me and I think maybe the committee members to kick it off, can you give us an update, please, on the Tri-Town plant, the progress with that?
Sure. It's a sight to see. The clear well is completely done. It's been tested. The roof is on. Hatches have been buttoned down. The main plant, Same thing, all the basins have been constructed. They are all tested for leaks. Everything is fine there. The admin, they did the final pour for the floor. So that's done. Right now, they're working on the raw water pump station, starting to get that together. The wastewater tank, they have walls going up there. The main walls to the actual treatment plant should be starting to go up end of May, early June. So it's really coming along.
That's great. And when are we expecting that to be operational?
Substantial completion is January of '26 right now.
Oh, wow, okay. Thank you. Well, that's good news that it's underway and under construction. Do any counselors have specific questions on the Water Enterprise Fund? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Director
I was just going to
Esmond.
make the point, I think Lou and I have had a few conversations. It's probably something that's important to note that structurally within the budget and sort of how we appropriate funds and account for this, I think there will probably need to be something that we bring probably in the middle of the fiscal year, really, to once we know really kind of the timing more and the structure. The Tri-Town plant will have to be accounted for sort of as a unique department, and it's actually as a water district once it's online. We're going to need to work through a number of different issues. So it's really just to put a marker in the sand that that's something we'll come back to and need to sort of elaborate further on how that impacts the sort of the budget writing process and how we work with the other two communities to account for that.
Thank you. Appreciate that call out, and we'll await the direction whenever that's available. Anything else on water? Good. Okay. All right. I think we're all set with water. So last enterprise fund then is the stormwater. And thank you, Hillary. Thank you for sticking with us. And appreciate you being here this evening. Is there anything you want to start with, or?
I would like to, thank you. I just want to note, we are focusing, we do show increases in this year's budget. We're also having a rate study with Abrams Group, so we're working on that in concert with Water and Sewer. The increases that we're showing kind of reflect our current priorities of investigation, redesign, and rehab of the existing drainage system. So you'll see increases in consultants, increases in motor vehicle repair, because our vehicles are mostly aging, an increase in water testing, that's mostly laboratory expenses for illicit discharge investigation, an increase in the pension fund, and an increase in the drain rehab budget, hopefully to help us, or it might be in drainage supplies, but hopefully to help us be, if not proactive in actual repairs, proactive in budgeting so that ad hoc repairs don't break our budget. Thank you.
Very helpful. Thank you very much. Any questions on stormwater? Councilor Reynolds?
Just one general question. I don't know if this may be more for Director Esmond. In terms of the pension fund, we've seen looks like a pretty decent jump. Is that due to the fact that I'm looking back through the historical from fiscal 21 to fiscal 23? It looks, you know, there was a pretty good jump between 21 and 22. Is this more of the ability to pay into the fund is why we're seeing a jump from 166 to 207?
So there's two factors. One is that all the enterprise funds are still budgeted to increase their contribution. So where we we worked with the retirement system to freeze the 2025 contribution for general fund support. We're not asking for the same for the enterprise funds. So there is an element of that where that 7.4% projection continues. In addition, there's a methodology that's provided and updated every year that determines, based on the covered payroll and other associated costs that we work with the retirement system to project that actually determines that amount. And there can be a little bit of catch up associated with, if there's a growing, increases in the payroll budget, for example, that may take a couple years. So it's really a combination of the two. But the bigger change is that the bigger of the two is that we are not freezing this contribution. So the same would go for water, sewer, and golf as well, and BELD.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Well, I somewhat anticipate this is from a good place, a good story, that we're able to do it, essentially.
Yeah.
That reflects the health and the management of our enterprise funds to date. So, thank you. Madam Chair, that is all I've got.
Thank you, Councilor Reynolds. Any other questions at this time for stormwater? Councilor Maglio?
So I have a question about where we would see the work. Like, I know one of the projects that is coming up is with regard to storm basins at, I know Smith Beach is an idea. I don't know if the funding is in for that. And then also at Watson Park. Is there has that funding been identified? Is it available? And if so, is the work associated with that funding part of this budget?
So yes, and most of the Watson Park project is in capital, so that's in a capital request, which I'm not sure we're okay to discuss, but we're looking for that funding. We look for grants, and part of that Watson project is funded by a grant. We tend to go through this kind of boom and bust cycle in terms of bringing projects up to final design and permitting, so that when grant funding becomes available and we have coincidental town funding available, the project is as shovel-ready as it can possibly be, because that's very attractive to the granting agencies. If you show them, look at my plans, look at my permits, may I please have some money, they are more likely to give you that money than if you say, we have an idea. So we're kind of reaching the end of that cycle, where we're going to be able to put some shovels in the ground this year at Elder Affairs, and potentially at Watson Park, and then we'll probably have a couple of softer years coming up as we're trying to, we're still looking at other rehab projects that are more necessary for drainage capacity and rehab than they are as exciting as the green infrastructure projects.
Thank you, that was really helpful. And so just to confirm, so the shovels in the ground at Elder Affairs and Watson, that work is part of this budget here?
They are not, in the sense that they're both funded in capital. The design work that brought us to where we are for both of those projects was in operating over the past couple of years.
Okay.
So the design work is mostly done for both of those.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Councilor Maglio. Did you have anything? Are you good, Councilor Moran? Okay. I have a question, and thank you so much for being so thorough, Hillary. This is going back to 2020. Your predecessor put together a very nice presentation about how the utility fees for stormwater are calculated. And my understanding is that we've now hit all of the steps that we needed to get to for funding our stormwater program. And this single-family, two-family, and three-family properties, no matter how big or small they may be, are charged the same rate. Is that going to be part, and I actually got this question from a resident, and it piqued my curiosity, is that going to be part of this rate study? Is it dependent on, because I know commercial and industrial properties have a much bigger impervious surface, roofs and asphalt and whatnot. Is there going to be any update, do you anticipate, to how the fees are calculated dependent upon the size of your home?
I think at this time, especially in this round of rate study, we're not looking at changing kind of the rules of the game, so to speak.
Okay.
the ERU size we're looking at, but it's likely to stay the same. Right now, we're just kind of trying to see what does the rate per ERU need to be. And for residential applications, the general plan is to keep it aligned with expectations in the sense that so people can plan ahead and plan their household budgets and things like that. One of the other things we're doing in the rate study is trying to identify parcels that might be improperly not billed, because when we first created the utility, it was built upon the water and sewer bills. But that means that if you didn't have a water meter, you weren't getting billed for stormwater necessarily right away. So I have parking lots, I have kind of empty parcels that we had, at one time we had a billing analyst whose job was to systematically evaluate those parcels. We haven't been able to staff that position lately, so that's been less of an in-house priority, so we're hoping to kind of absorb some of that back in this rate study. But a long way to say, I don't expect the rules to change as of yet.
If I may add.
Please, go ahead, Director.
So in addition, also, you may have properties that are, improperly, billed too much, too. So we look at both spectrums, if it's overcharged or undercharged. So we're looking at both. We want to make sure it's fair and even for everybody. So.
Agreed, thank you. And if we can, when that's available, are you anticipating that also by the end of this week, or is that?
I would say a little bit longer for us, but before June 30th is our contract date.
Oh, great. If we can get a copy of that, I would be interested in it, and I think very helpful for the committee, so thank you. Okay, any other questions at this time? If not, I believe we have a few revolving funds we need to, what do we need to do on the revolving funds? I apologize, Clerk Semino, you told me what.
4022, and it's just for recycling.
Motion to table. Thank you, everyone, while we work through our parliamentary procedures here. I think we're ready to do
Page
that.
3.
Page 3.
So you want them taken off?
Yes, please.
Okay, so, Madam Chair, I would move to take off the table order 24022.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That is unanimous. This is for the revolving funds. Do we have any questions from the Committee on Revolving Funds? Okay, if not, we're going to go back and table it, I think.
Okay. Madam Chair, I will move to table order 24022 to May 14, 2024.
Second?
All in favor to table the revolving funds to tomorrow night's meeting?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, good, okay. Any opposed? Okay, that is unanimous. All right.
To table order 24020.
Is there a motion to table order 24020?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That is unanimous. And with that, we have a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you so much, BCAM. This meeting is adjourned. See you tomorrow.